Welcome. I am Asa Lanham, the Chief Executive Officer of Innovaro, and this is part 4 in our series on innovation for executives. In this section, we're going to focus on the act of ideation, or how do you generate ideas. If you remember in our earlier section, we talked about the 4 I's for this: ideation, incubation, investigation, and implementation. And in this session in particular, what we really want to focus on is ideation. That's all about how do you generate ideas? How do you get things started? And the fact is that it's really all about the idea. That's what it starts with. To paraphrase to the Bill Clinton campaign, he said it was all about the economy. Well, in this case, it's all about the idea. And Jack Anderson, who was the head of innovation for Chevron at their facility in San Ramon, said something I thought was very important. It says, an idea is formed in the mind of one person. Now, it doesn't mean that's where it bears full fruit. Lots of other people work on it. But somebody comes up with an idea. And the question is, how do they get there? What has some people generate ideas and others don't? And we'll talk a little bit about the process of generating ideas a little later in a thing. We'll talk about creativity. But I will tell you that many companies fail because they really have no systematic or repeatable method for generating ideas. They rely on somebody having that bright spark and coming through and making it successful. So that's one of the challenges with the ideas. The second challenge with the idea is the size and the scope, right? Big ideas are tough to sell. They've got they're threatening, they're difficult, they're tougher, they're risky to implement. They generally take more resources. Smaller ideas are less threatening and difficult, and they're easy to implement. And if you remember from our section on governance, part of what we talked about in there in determining the portfolio for innovation was what's the blend between small ideas and big ideas. And let's not forget that there is a risk versus reward. There aren't many small ideas that have big rewards. So you've got to work on the balance there. We're talking about big ideas being scary. They do threaten existing businesses. They could threaten our markets. What if our competitors move over to the new product and don't buy the old product? There's the gap in our revenue stream. How are we going to have the salespeople to cover this? Do we have the right people? They're going to compete for resources and management attention. They are scary, right? The other problem you have with big ideas is the big ones are valuable, right? I actually was talking to a couple of my people about some of this, and I said, so let's suppose that you suddenly came up with an idea for a $100 million or a $200 million a year business. Would you come in and turn that over to us and we'd get right on it? And they said, well, not really. We'd probably go out and see if we could get funding and go on it ourselves. So the question is, if it's worth a lot of money, why would an individual give it up? I mean, that's what venture capitalists do. They look for those people. So the other part of it then becomes, unless you collectively as a company look to generate big ideas as well as small ideas, they're going to walk out the door and they're going to look for funding, particularly the big ideas. So that's important to start with. Look a little bit about creativity. And creativity really is all about the need to stretch our thinking. We're all taught to think in certain ways. It's part of our education, everything from how do you diagram a sentence to, the basic math, all those kinds of things. And in fact, engineers generally learn that there's only one correct solution to a particular problem. So we all tend to think linearly, right? For example, just try saying the alphabet backwards. We're all used to sing-songing it from the front, to the back. Try starting in the middle and going backwards for a while. We learn in math, if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is equal to C. Well, why isn't A equal to D, and what happened to X? Right? So how do we get outside of that? And that's a very important thing to do. Part of what you need to do to look at for the ideation process is you've really got to have company-wide training. You've got to build a cadre of core people that have the mindset, the skills, and that in order to really think creatively. And then there are techniques you can use to do that. We talk about creative collision, the brainstorming. There's crashing, which is really a preconditioned kind of brainstorming. There's crowdsourcing. There's a variety of other things. And then last but not least, there's a whole set of exercises and challenges and puzzles that you can use. I can tell you that I taught my first class in creativity in industry in 1978 while I was at Amdahl Corporation, and that was all about getting people conditioned to start to think about how we as a very small company were going to innovatively compete with IBM. There is a particular challenge I like that's just completely off the wall, has nothing to do with work, called the Spaghetti and Marshmallow Challenge. And if you'd like to know more about it, shoot me an email. There's an email address at the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to tell you more about that challenge. It's a lot of fun, and it's got some amazing results. In order to support these new ideas, we've got to find a way to discover new information, right? Without new perceptions and input, you get the same results. So we teach you to think in new ways, but then we don't give you any information to work on it. It's like giving you a new recipe with no ingredients. So we need to have an organized discovery process that looks very broadly and brings a lot of information to bear, that gathers lots and lots of data for us to use as fuel to fire the process of ideation. Now, when you get all that information, there's questions about how do I organize it. And one of the things that a lot of methodologies bring forward are what they call perceptual lenses. And these are simply ways of organizing information for use. Common ones are things like consumer insights, really understanding the day in the life of your consumer, your purchaser. Why are they doing this? And that's not traditional market research. That's really asking for the unspoken needs. Discontinuities, what's changed in my marketplace, like smartphones, the price of gasoline, things of that nature. It's suddenly gotten expensive. Orthodoxies, we only sell products to women. We only sell products in North America. We're only a manufacturing company. We don't do our own design. These are things that we all have that are different for other companies, and organizing information to look at these are important. And last but not least, core competencies. What are we the best at doing? If we're really great at manufacturing and not so good at selling, then we really got to take a look at why we'd want to do something that's got a lot more to do with distribution and sales than manufacturing. And then last but not least, it's finding an open market for ideas. And this is all about not simply relying on your own people. It's crowdsourcing, it's open innovation, it's listening to social media, it's connecting your organization with other organizations that provide you materials and products and parts and all the kinds of things that you want to do that. So you've got to discover a lot of information to really make the ideation process work. I want to talk a little bit about getting to the idea. And there are certain drivers that exist for getting to ideas, right? And there are really only about 3 of those that are fundamentals. The first of those is what I refer to as events. And this is an idea happens. Someone walks in the doorway, trips over a threshold and says, hey, there's a better way to do that. Or they spill their coffee in the car and think, hey, cup holders would be a great thing. The second one is really outcome. And this is goal-oriented innovation. We've got to get from here to there. How are we going to do it? We have to do it innovatively. It's like coming up to that stream when you were a kid and there's no bridge and you want to get across. You look for the rocks, you see if you can throw something down. There's all kinds of ways to get to the other side of that stream. And then last but not least, certainly are the methodology based. And these are systematic, repeatable methodologies that are really all about making sure that you can, in fact, get the answers you want. So let's take a look at event-driven ideation. And event-driven ideation relies on the fact that ideas happen, right? And they do, right? We know that. Something happens and that causes an individual to have an idea. And then an individual shares the idea, it's brought forth, it's considered, other people look at it, right? And there are a lot of ways to help capture or generate ideas. The classic capturing of ideas was suggestion boxes, and some of those had reward systems which were meant to motivate people and incent them to bring forward. There's another one that's used commonly called challenges. And challenges are basically a statement of a problem to be solved that's shared with a broader audience. You set up the barriers, you set up the hurdles, then you say, how do we get from here to there? And that's one of the things you can really do to do that. Ideas can be solicited, right? We talked about challenges. Well, challenges, closed innovation says we're only going to work with the people that are part of our organization, whereas open innovation says we're going to have broad internal and external sources. They might include our suppliers, they might include our customers. How many of us have customer advisory boards, right? Things of that nature. Crowdsourcing relies on social media listening to what a lot of people are saying and coming up with ideas from that. And then the idea marketplace says, hey, here's the ideas that we're looking for on an ongoing basis. If you've got something, bring it to us and we'd like to talk to you about it. And then the last and the really part of this is the latest topic is big data. And big data says that the analytics are going to tell us what to do. And this really has to do with really looking at the volume of data. There's lots and lots of it. And the velocity, how fast is it growing? How fast is it changing? What do we know about that kind of stuff? And last but not least is certainly, the the variability of the data. How much does it change in those kinds of things? So those are the things, the variety are very, very important about looking at big data to help us get information out of that. Let's talk a minute now about outcome-driven ideation. This is the one that most of us are familiar with as executives. This is the most common. This is the standard business planning process. Well, it's the fall. It's time for the corporate strategy and plan. And in that, we look at what's the as-is state and what's the to-be state, and then we plan future back and create a migration plan with some number of programs and a set of owners that are defined. Right? It's the now, it's the where, and it's the how are we going to get there. And generally, innovation gets pushed down and has to occur within the migration plan in order to achieve the to-be state. And with a few exceptions, this is most commonly incremental innovation that moves a business from one state to the next in a set of reasonable connected activities, unless the strategic plan calls for a fundamental change, a shift in markets or consumers or products offered. Right? The actual innovation then is driven by the need to achieve certain outcomes to support the business strategy and plan. What's the question? What's the idea? If it works, great, you get money. If it doesn't, you go back and get another idea and another idea and another idea. And that's very, very straightforward. We've seen it, for decades in the business planning process. Frequently those are held annually. Sometimes they'll be to revisit or revise a 3 to 5 year plan. You're going to look at status against the plan. You're going to set the next year plan specifics. You're going to allocate budget. You're going to do all of those kinds of things. Says, what are we going to do next year? Where are we going to go? And how is it going to get us to our goal? So that's all about outcome-driven ideation. The third one we'll talk about is methodology-driven ideation. And this is different in a number of ways from the previous two. Because what this says is I have a regular, repeatable process, a method, a set of steps that's supported by tools. And if you think of this in one way as it's a cookbook. It's not only a cookbook, it's a cookbook that's got a set of menus and a set of recipes in it. You can put them together in different ways to get different outcomes. Or, it's the dance steps. It's the steps you go through and you follow it through and you get that. Now, one of the important things about methodology-driven ideation is that its intent is to create a set of reusable artifacts, both from a discovery standpoint, from idea standpoint, and from business concepts. Right? A good methodology-driven ideation system will have a broad discovery capability. It's a fundamental part of it because it knows that on an ongoing basis you have to keep bringing new information in. So not only does it gather it the first time, but it updates it and it continues to keep it up to speed. All right? And it'll have perceptual lenses. It'll have a way to help you organize the thinking of what you're doing and how to leverage your competencies and your strategic assets and those kinds of things. And it should generate a broad spectrum of ideas. In a good methodology-driven ideation process, you'll generate a lot of small ideas, and then you'll begin to combine those ideas into bigger platforms, which become business concepts that you can take to the marketplace and talk to others. So that's the third is methodology-driven ideation. I want to talk a little bit about ideation techniques and tools. And ideation techniques are common, right, across a variety of these. You express the challenge, whether it's methodology or whether it's process or any of those. It's all about expressing challenges. Discovery is a technique about collection, recording, and analysis of new information. So whether it's event-driven or the others, you want to do that, right? Generating ideas, each of these can use brainstorming, crashing, crowdsourcing. It's not that technology, that technique is not restricted to one or another particular one of these drivers, right? Collection and recording of ideas. The classic one, we've all gone through brainstorming sessions where everything gets written on Post-it notes and flip charts and put up on the wall. It's a great session, and then you're done. And somebody goes, what do we do with all of this? And originally it used to be, well, I'll fold it up and put it in my desk, and that we will have it the next time we get together. And it gets lost. I get transferred. My office gets moved. It's gone. Or we'll have one of the administrators record it all, and we'll send it out on a Word document. And it's not there. So the tools to support the discovery, the tools to support generating ideas and collection and recording ideas are very, very important. You also want to be able to search for the similar or same ideas, right? You don't want to spend a lot of time looking at the same idea over and over again or ideas that are very similar. Those are the ones you want to combine. That's how you get leverage out of these things. and your tool should help you do that. And that certainly should be one of the techniques you have in mind. And last but not least, and this is important, not all ideas are right at a particular time. That doesn't mean they're wrong, just means they may not be right at a particular time. And what you really want to have is you want to have an idea bank for orphaned ideas. And frequently what this means is people can go in and they can take a look at the idea bank. They can take a look at the orphans. And a lot of times the orphans will generate other ideas and things that are very important to look at. So an idea bank is part of what you have from a technique and from the tools that support it are important for you. I want to thank you very much for your time on this. That's all there is in this session, and I'll look forward to seeing you again for part 5.